thank you for those that give of their time and talents to make what we have going work. And we ask that you guide all of us that are involved in doing the business of Floresville, as well as the citizens who partake in what we do. Give us the wisdom and the ability to see what's best for our town and the courage to carry them out. We ask all of this in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. We can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We do have a quorum, and I'd like to introduce our newest board member, Mr. Jacob Gauna. Mr. Gauna, would you like to say a few words, introduce yourself?
Well, when I was asked if I was interested, I gave it a lot of thought, and I finally came to the agreement that I wanted to serve and try to do the best that I could to help our community, our city. And I'm new at this, so I'm willing to learn, and hopefully in a couple of meetings that I'll be up for and know what's going on. So.
Thank you for being here.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Also at the conference table, we have board member Ben Reed, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Edrock, Ms. Castillo, Director John Rodriguez, our attorney, Mr. Alfredo Padilla, who's replacing Silvia Rodriguez for the evening. And also we have with us our city manager, Henrietta Turner. We also have different guests. And Councilmember Martinez. I'm going to open up the floor for citizens' comments. If there are no comments, we'll move on to old business. Consideration and action to approve meeting minutes of the regular board meeting held on March 11, 2019. Let's take a moment to review the minutes that our director has presented in our packet. The only correction that I see was regarding item 3F, life change and hardship condition pertaining to section 11. I believe Mr. Rodriguez advised us he will not and cannot move. And Mr. Rodriguez also said he did not want an extension. Does that sound accurate, Mr. Rodriguez?
No, actually what I said was, when you said that basically that it's either that or nothing, and I corrected you and I said, no, it's not like that. I have a serious situation going on with my family, and it's very difficult, and there were other reasons in which I made, so that's why I put the way I wrote it, because I went back on the minutes and listened to the recording, and that's where I got it from.
Any other discussion?
So can someone repeat the amended part on this item? There was item,
On the same item, Ms. Castillo?
which item was that?
3F.
3F.
Okay, so what is the amended part?
What happened was, when we were discussing it, you asked Ms. Rodriguez to, and you charged her with having me instruct her to look into the contract, give her a copy of my contract, which I did at the meeting. And she looked at it, and at that time she had instructed the board and said, just based on the preliminary review of it, she said, what it will take is the 4 votes in order for it to occur, to amend, that you could do anything with.
I recall that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so that was basically what was stated, And then she would go back and research it in more detail and come back with an opinion, written opinion for for the board, which she did, and I attached into your packet.
Okay, thank you.
But am I correct to say that you told the board that you would not because of the hardship?
Well, I mean, it's evident, the fact that the reason I put it on there is to give you notice with plenty of time to understand that I had a hardship and that I would not be able to move into the city
Okay.
at that particular time. That's why I put you on notice to let you know, and wanting to see what the board would respond to. And as I mentioned before, I would rather present it to you now instead of wait to the very last minute. And so I thought that it would be best to address it in the most efficient and the most transparent way.
Thank you.
You also said that you would like to see that particular item removed from the.
Yes, and that's the purpose of the amendment. That's, I mean, it's if you want to keep me. If you don't, obviously, we know what needs to be done after that, and I'm willing to consider those things. I still have till 6 months, so those are the things that I will consider as well from my end. But right now, I don't think it's appropriate because we're actually discussing the item, and this is just
Yeah,
the
just
approval of the
minutes.
minutes, and so
Yeah, we're just-
we're actually out of the context of the open meetings
Yeah.
act required to discuss stuff.
But I think we did discuss some specifics regarding that.
And I think the
Yeah.
appropriate time to discuss that would be at the item when we discuss.
No,
it.
I'm referring to the meeting,
The
March
minutes.
11th, yeah.
Okay, and what
minutes.
exactly would you like to do
I
with
think you
this?
just mentioned that because of your hardship, you're not able to.
You want to add that in?
Yeah, I think that should be added there, right?
Because I think, well,
I mean, am
then,
am I hearing it correctly? Did I hear it?
Well, she prepared the, our attorney prepared the item for discussion, and she put it under the executive session. So the language that you see there is in accordance to and response to the item that we discussed in the former meeting. And so this is where she put in, where she, request for contract amendment regarding request to waive relocation requirement due to a familial
but you're asking
hardship.
about
The minutes.
The
Yeah.
minutes, we're just trying to correct the minutes. that's
Okay,
all.
so how would, what is it that you would like to correct on it? How would you like to correct it? It's at the board's review. I'm just
Yeah.
telling you what I heard in the tape, and I just copied what I heard.
Any discussion from the,
Well, until we have clarification, can we table the minutes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion on the table.
I second it.
Okay, and then what are my instructions for handling the minutes? How do you want to do that? How do you want to confirm the authenticity of this particular language in here? Do you
I
want?
think, in my opinion, I think this portion right here is leaving out the part of what you actually said.
Which is?
Because of your hardship, you would not be able to move.
Okay, well,
Could we add that in there?
you can add it in there, but at the same time, I still have the option to make a decision after the 6 months, so.
Yeah, but this
I
is
don't-
regarding
yeah,
this.
I just
This
want to
is
make
just about the
sure.
minutes.
That's just recording what
Yeah.
you said. in
Yes.
the
This is
meeting,
just the
that's all you
minutes.
say.
Okay, that's fine.
Just add that in.
Yeah, I see the purpose in which why
Or
you
you
want to do
want to, we have a first and a second here.
Or I'll rescind my second.
that. Okay,
Ours in the motion if we're going to just add that
You're gonna
in.
add in what you're
Yeah.
happy with or satisfied
Well, I
with.
mean, it's just my thought, it just,
so you want
Is
to add
everybody-
in the language that says, just so I correctly understand, you want to add the language that says, will not or cannot move.
I think you said both, will not and cannot.
No, what Ben asked me was, so Mr. Rodriguez, would you consider an extension? I said, I can't consider an extension because it's a moot point. I can't move. And so I'll repeat it.
If you could just put that in, can't
That's
move.
fine
You can't move.
at this point.
Yeah.
Now, if I need to change my mind and I
Yeah,
find
this
a
is
way
as far as this
to,
matters.
That's
but I
just
doubt it.
recording
These are
what you
just
said
the
at that
minutes.
Yeah,
particular meeting.
so that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add the language. cannot move due to familiar hardship.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, if you're ready for a vote, with the amendment made, I move that we accept the minutes of last meeting.
Motion by Mr. Gonzalez, is there a second to approve it with the addition, with the edit?
I second it.
Second by Castillo, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. President, if you don't mind, can we vote by raising our hands so that each of us can see what's
Yeah.
on?
Sure, we could do
I
that.
think it's easier for us to do it.
I think so.
All right.
Okay,
Let's move on to a presentation and discussion, item 2A. Mr. Reed, could you give us a 2019 financial report?
The only reports, I'm looking over it, some pretty standard, administrative costs that come out. We're paying, the parks, I think, we get caught up on that? On the park maintenance? You got caught up on that?
Can I speak, Mr.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that happened, and
But we did
your
set up a joint
executive
account.
director, we actually transferred those funds for the parking lot, is that right?
Yeah, 225.
And then we also transferred the money for the maintenance for the parks and for the ADA, so those kind of things have already transferred. You see in that, I believe, it's a total of $327,000. So we now have a landscaper, because we did it before, we now have a landscaper that's doing that, and so now we have those funds.
We actually put the
Landscaper.
227 in a line item, so they can give a spend down on, we can report back how that's being spent towards the material.
Yes, I know it's not necessarily on your agenda for report, but
Yeah.
we haven't spent any of that out yet because we just received the funds and we've ordered and made purchases. And so probably at your next meeting, I'll be able to tell you where we are today.
Tell me again what it was for?
For the $227,000 for
Well, what's
the
the project?
downtown parking lots.
The out the back of the house. You can see if you go back there, they started doing the water line.
Yes.
Man, they got it all for it.
but we transferred that money over.
Yes, that money's done, and also the transfer
The transfer.
for the $50,000 for the
Right.
maintenance of the park. And I have my first invoice from Henry, please forgive me his reference, for the landscaping, so I'll be able to report to you next
Real
month.
And
Real hus.
one more thing, let me add, also, just so you know, right after that particular transfer, a few days later, I transferred over 300,000 from the operating account over into the money market account, because we had 370 and change thousand, so I left 70 in the operating account and transferred over to the higher interest bearing account of the money market.
That's for their.
So you only have
extra.
70-something thousand in the account,
Yeah.
instead of the 300 as stated there.
Yeah.
Those are the major changes.
And then, I can let your executive director speak to meeting with, Frost Bank. They had some people here, I don't know if it was on this list to talk about, but, they did, speak, to him and met with him and.
Means Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, I'm sorry. Frost, I'm looking at you. Yeah, Wells Fargo.
It's like, that is, that's a curveball to you.
You still got Wells Fargo tattooed on your forehead, all those years, it's kind of in your blood.
Yeah.
Wells Fargo to speak to the concerns that he had, and I'm hoping that they address those things and those concerns, so we're going to do that. So your next one, I'll have some backup and some other things, because we actually have expended some funds, but we haven't closed out the month yet, so I'll have that at your next meeting.
And I think the board, I emailed you a copy of the correspondence between myself and Wells Fargo, discussing the items that I had concerns about and you had concerns about.
And as far as the sidewalk is concerned, we did get the order to proceed. I think Wilson County News had something on recently they're out there surveying, because we have the order to proceed to start. Of course, we won't actually spend any of those funds, but I have assured them and shared with the powers that be, that TDA, that we have those funds, we approved those funds, and we can move forward. Okay?
And Friday, I took pictures of the construction and they were breaking into asphalt.
Well, we're breaking for
So I want to share that with y'all as well.
Thank you.
And then the only other thing is, on our sales tax collection, it's staying steady. And we got about $5 more than we were this time last year, which from 2 years back, rose about 5,000. So we're staying consistent with our sales tax. I think it's gonna continue to rise with some of the new businesses that come into town.
Good. Does that conclude your report, sir?
Yes.
Let's go on to new business.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
may I have the floor just to ask our executive director a question regarding the items under new business A through D?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, may I? Thank you. But before I ask the question, I want to address our guests who have agenda items under new business. That my question is not intended to disrespect your requests, nor to influence board members' votes, but only to clarify whether or not the agenda items requesting monetary donations are in compliance with the intended use of our Fedc funds. Because I've noticed that lately we've had a lot of these, so Mr. Rodriguez, for you, since you included a brief summary of the justification on one of the items, but not the others, can you explain to the board how these requests contribute to the growth and development of Floresville? In short, how do these donations bring new investments and jobs to promote our city?
Okay, great, and that's a good question that you need to answer yourselves, which is what I've been warning you from time to time about these donations coming in, and there's no semblance as to the order in which you're getting them. My job basically is to get them, it's requested to place on the agenda, and we put them on the agenda for you to review. So it's within your purvey to do that, Ms. Castillo. And so I just put them on there. Now, the information that you have substantiating the one that you're referring to with Ms. Madero,
Yes.
that one there, she provided it herself.
Oh, that wasn't yours? The typed
No, ma'am,
up
none of
sheet?
these are mine.
No, the typed up explanation. This one. Is that yours? Did she type all this?
No,
up?
ma'am, that's hers.
Oh, okay.
That's Ms. Madero's explanation. That is, everything that I get, I just pass it on to you. And what I try to do, for example, if I get an email from the Chamber of Commerce, well, since we're partnering with the Chamber, we've helped them with the Christmas tree, they ask for a minute amount, so I bring it before you to decide what you want to do. Now, at the last meeting, we discussed that, and we did have a conversation regarding these particular solicitations and requests for funding. And we had instructed, which I sent a couple of emails to Ms. Rodriguez, which I have documentation of, Mr. Padilla. And do you have a legal opinion there? Because I've asked her several times to produce me a legal opinion on the use of economic development funds for these particular events,
And
because the board,
My only concern is that we, as a board, are in compliance
So
with all
am I.
these requests. Because
that's
a
exactly
big
my
worry.
concern.
I don't want to have to go to jail for anybody.
Yeah, and that's exactly what my concern is as well.
Mr.
And
President,
Mr. Gonzalez?
yes, before we go on, you're telling us that you give us everything you received and you just pass them on to us. But I don't believe that that's all you need to or have to do or should be doing. In fact, you're the technical expert that operates under us, that makes our job hopefully easier by understanding from you. Are these things, something we can vote on without concern that they're not legal maybe? And again, like Sherry said, we're not disparaging anybody that's turning in the request. They're at liberty to do that. Our concern again is that they're authorized by the law properly. When I read some of the stuff that comes out from DML, and when you read the law, it's pretty nebulous on there as to whether this kind of thing, the donations, for example, actually properly should be funded out of our 4B funds. And the reason I say that, when you read almost anything on it, the thing that pops out at me is that there must be a project. Now, it talks about a lot of things that are included in that project, but the thing is, there has to be a project that has to be acceptable to the council. We have to go to them, not just individual requests here and there about anything that might enhance Floresville in some way. We appreciate that, but we're not in the business of just doling out money simply because we like what they're doing or we appreciate what they're doing. We have to be legal as you are.
okay, and my response to that is this: you need to practice what you preach. Because in the previous decisions you've made, now I'm new, remember, I just came in December. So when I first came in, the first thing you had was a $30,000 donation for a Christmas tree. Now, that was passed.
Are you saying me?
Well, I'm saying the whole board, period. The whole board has made decisions. And
That
there's-
wasn't a donation, but I'm gonna clarify that was an investment in downtown.
But it was
The way-
worded donation.
Yeah, the way that was, and we clarified that because they donated that money over there, we should have, that's why we created that line item. Because it wasn't done the way that we actually, you go back and if you were to find the minutes, And that way the motion
I
was
did.
made, it wasn't made as a donation, it was
It
made.
strictly says
Yeah.
donation, and I'll bring it to you if you like.
It was a holiday
It was a
light.
holiday
I'll
lighting
bring you
project.
the, Ms. Lehman, was it
Yeah.
worded as a donation?
So, well, that's why we're.
You
doing
weren't,
the
oh, that's
lighting.
right, you weren't here.
No, she wasn't part
But
of
I
it.
have it, I have the minutes. But it's all in what you
Before
wanna
we
do,
get
you
into
say.
a much leaning kind of thing here, we're simply asking for a technical determination.
Here's
that
what I
helps
would
us.
recommend you do, Mr. Gonzalez and the board. If you would like for me to have specific instructions on how to proceed pertaining to this, the technical experience, obviously, I can give you. And I understand the law, and I know it, and I can research it as well. However, when you set a precedent in the last meeting in which you conducted your meeting, you give certain instructions, and you give certain things to direction to certain individuals. So I, as your executive director, just execute those things on your behalf. Because you've given instructions, for example, you specifically instructed your attorney to get that information. You didn't ask me, you said the attorney. You wanted, I've got the recording. I can play it back for you.
I don't, tell me what project we were talking about.
When it comes to donations and sponsorships, and the way I see it right now is it's like you're thinking, you're making it sound like I am like putting these items on here with just, with no consideration for what you're trying to achieve here. And what I see is that these items here are presented to me, and I have a duty to present them to you so that you can look at it and make the decision if you want to do that. Now, we don't have the legal opinion. There's no legal opinion there. I have the texts and the emails in which I've consistently asked Ms. Rodriguez to present that to me. And right before the meeting, I sent her an email. Please, could you give me the opinion on the sponsorships as to how it meets the requirement under what y'all are trying to achieve?
But again, I think we're really not hitting the subject properly. It's not a matter of disagreement among us individuals. It's a matter of what the EDC executive director should give us, kind of like a staff completed staff work, so that we, the people that are not technical experts, although a lot of us know enough about it to understand or at least question, we're not arguing here, we're simply trying to make it
No,
easy
neither
for
am
us
I.
to.
Yeah, perhaps,
I just
Let me
wanna
read
make-
something here. This is coming from TML. It says, an EDC must always emphasize that activities pursued must be attributable to a project. And they define a project as an extensive involvement, or we're either buying land or we're providing for equipment or, maybe infrastructure costs and so on. But it's always a project, And so when I read that, and the law says the same thing. In fact, some of the quotes in the request that we're talking about now, the 505.152, they don't necessarily fit what we're looking at. They may have items that are related, but it's still a project that's going to in some way further our business climate or environment.
Your economic
and
development.
create either new or maintaining primary jobs. And so for us.
I fully understand that, but your actions in the past have not been there. It's not been the same. Y'all made decisions
I don't want to get into.
differently in the past, so I was just following your formal protocol.
Look,
If you want me to do
correct you
differently,
something, though, Johnny, when I've made a motion, because I know exactly what I say when I do it. We decide on something.
Mhm.
For example, we're gonna hire attorney this and so. And my follow-up on that is, and we, advise or direct the ED
Right.
to complete the action, to go ahead and make proper notifications, to arrange or negotiate a fee, and then complete the project. That's all I say beyond that. I never make decisions that are technical that I don't know enough about.
do
so,
we,
go ahead.
excuse
Mrs.
me,
Christie,
do
I'm
we
sorry.
have a list of criteria
No.
for each one of these projects to
This-
meet before they come to the agenda?
This is what I advised you
Okay.
in the past meetings. I have consistently told you all that you have to have some form of a semblance, some form of criteria as to how you're going to be handling these sponsorships, because you don't have the money that you think you have, because you did not know of these transfers of the pool money You didn't know about these other things that were going on. So the money that you thought you had, I've been warning you, be careful how you're spending your money. And I said, we've got to cut back a little bit on some of these sponsorships. So I think I've done my duty to give you enough warning for these kind of things to occur. And it's as simple as when you're going through each individual item for you to say, I cannot approve this because it does not meet the requirement under so and so and so. Now, I did mention that to Ms. Madero, didn't I, Ms. Madero? So Ms. Madero went and did her research, brought me back her response. So I don't want to get into an argument with Ms. Madero whether it is or it isn't. I want the board for you to tell her that. It's your responsibility to do that because she's asking you. She's not asking me as a person. She's asking the board as an entity.
We're still missing the point here. You know, we hired an expert that's supposed to tell us, you know, when he hands a project over to us, that it's been staffed, researched, and that I recommend doing it because it meets everything, you know. You can't expect us in this kind of a forum to decide those kind of things.
So in the past, when Mr. Baker, the predecessor, in the past, he would say it's fine, we can donate $30,000 for here, it's fine, we can donate $15,000 to Freedom Fest, it's fine to donate money over here, and you just put it on the board and voted for it. So how am I supposed to not follow that precedent? Now I can hear what you're saying. So for me now, I know exactly what I need to do in the future, and that is address the issue on each individual donation that comes in. I will do the research, and then I will tell
We
them,
appreciate that.
and then I will let the individual that's requesting for that donation to discuss it with you during an open session or however it may be. I was just under the impression from the past precedent that we're here to help the city, and we've talked about different projects on how we're gonna help, Christmas tree refunding, all these things, so I'm very confused on your direction that you're taking. And now that I have more clear, definitive understanding, I can address it.
I
on
think
this
our
particular
president, you
subject.
know, pretty much follows the idea that I'm referring to here. You know, when we get, after discussion like we're doing right now, and we get information hopefully from you and if necessary from the attorney, but as Mr. Tejada has always said, what is your recommendation? You know, final. Because, you know, we're just common folk from the street, we know a little better than that, but actually, we're not supposed to be the technical expert. We have to have somebody we depend on, otherwise we wouldn't need an executive director nor an attorney advisor.
I would have to respectfully disagree, only because you've been on the board for so long. You have had a lot of experience on this board, you have led this board, and you know exactly how this board operates. So for that to be said to me means to me that you're not really following the protocols, it's only as it comes along. I just need to know, and you've already told me what the direction is. I will follow that direction from this point on. And if there's anything else, we need to have a workshop so that you can give me
Absolutely.
specific
Very one
direction.
thing I agree with.
Yeah, we should have a workshop.
I've been saying
Give
that
me
since
specific
we started.
directions as to exactly how you want me to conduct
We
business.
can talk about that on that.
Why don't we do that at the tail end of our meeting here? We have a provision there for doing that, for planning
Yes,
things
sir.
for the future.
I would recommend that very highly.
I'm gonna put that right about it.
Any other discussion?
And I want to clarify that, you know, they may think it's a donation, but the Christmas project was about revitalizing downtown. From the workshop we had previously about we set goals, that was one of the goals, is how do we bring downtown. So that was part of the holiday and investing in a project.
And
Whether
it
it's
went
on-
to the council for approval.
That's right, exactly.
And it was a project of not just the tree, but the electricity and all that to bring that downtown.
Yeah.
And that was the first phase.
That was the first phase.
And I'm not disagreeing,
And Johnny, you know,
on that.
we had a resolution here, we had a public hearing, and it was submitted to, after the 60-day waiting, it was submitted to the council for approval as required, for the project, that is, so we did have a project. And that's my concern, and and I'll repeat this vehemently, because I really want people to understand, we're not against helping the town, we're not. I'm concerned about by what means we do it,
Right.
and it has to be the proper means.
And you do understand that I'm not the one that's driving this. This comes to me just because people come and say, Mr. Rodriguez,
Okay, and I
you know,
understand
or
that.
I run into him, meet him, and says, we would like to see if the FEDC would donate some money to this cause. And says, sure, I'll get it on the board for you guys to review and look at and help you out. In the case of Miss Lehman, I called her up because we have been trying to work with the chamber to build a good rapport and a relationship. And her request was a very mean, $60 helps, you know, whoever, and so I thought I'd bring it before you for consideration. And so, you know,
But with that.
I understand now
a dead horse,
what you want to do.
the amount here is not really the key, and, you know, even if it were minimal, as you indicate, it still has to meet the requirements, you know. And again,
Fully agree.
you know, if there's a way that the town of Floresville, whether